In this video, we will configure the network rule for transitive routing. What it means? Let's get into the architecture diagram. We have a VNet hub and we got a two-spoke network, and we know the fact that by default, two virtual networks when paired with hub can't talk to each other. And we have already implemented Azure Firewall in the previous demo. So in this demo, what is that we're gonna do? We're going to test, when we enforce the routing on subnet 1 and subnet 2, whether they can talk to each other or not, and how to enable these two subnet to talk to the VM3. That is what we're going to test in this particular demo. So let's get on the portal. I am on the Azure portal, and we know the fact that in the previous demo we have three virtual machines that we spun up. So first thing is that what is that we're gonna do? We're just going to check the connectivity between VM1 and VM2. They are in the same network. All right. What I mean, if we go to the virtual network, they are in the spoke 1. So first thing is that we want to see whether spoke 1 VM can talk to each other or not. When there is a route table enforced on them, and this route table, if you take a look, what this particular route table can do, they can send all the traffic to the Azure Firewall, right? So what is that we're trying to prove in this particular case? Whether our network subnet 1 and subnet 2 can talk to each other or not, right? So I'm just going to get on the spoke VM host name. Let's make sure VM2 and VM1. Let's make sure that it is our host name VM1. From this particular thing, what is that we are trying to do from VM1? Let's make sure that whether we can go to the VM2 or not, right? So first thing is we would like to know the IP address of the VM2, right? So here we come and we say IP config and 21.4. all right, let's come here on the VM1 10.20.1.4 and let's ensure that. You see, even though there is a route table enforced within the same virtual network subnet, machines still can talk to each other. It means that subnet doesn't respect the route table that are enforced, within the same virtual network. That is the key thing to understand, right? What we do, we basically check the IP config in this case, and we go on a 10.20.0.4 from VM2. We are on a VM2, and let's log in now to the 10.20.0.4. From the other subnet, they can talk to each other, right? We getting a kind of response back for the RDP connection, right? But if you want to talk to the other VM, which is going to be, let's get on the third VM and we check the CMD and IP config and host name, right, which is in a different network altogether, which is 30.0.4. from any one of them. We can choose from the VM2, which is going to be 30.0.4, right? They can't talk to each other. Spinning and spinning and spinning. It's not going to talk to that particular computer, and this is what we're trying to basically implement, through the Azure Firewall. So what is that we're gonna do? We head back to the Azure Firewall, all right, and we just going to add the network rule. So once again we go to the firewall policies, and we click on the firewall policy, and in the firewall policy we go to the network rules, and this is where we add a collection. All right, we say that workload, I think rather than calling it workload, we say that we say vnet spoke 1, right, to vnet maybe spoke 2, and we give a priority in this case as well 100, and rule group, let's select this one, and we add a rule called maybe RDP. In this case you can be specific. We're going to select the IP group, and what is that I did, I have some IP groups created, maybe from spoke 1. That's what we select. We say TCP, and we select almost all the port in this particular case, and again we select the IP group, and we select the spoke 2 in this particular case, right, and we add this particular rule, right. Now IP group is just a container. If you want to create an IP group, what you should do, you just here IP group, you select the IP group resource, and you just create the IP group, something like that. All right, you select the name of the resource group and name the IP group. That is what I did here, okay, just to save up some time. And in this particular IP group, what I did, I just particularly added the IP address for each network. If you take a look, VNet hub and VNet spoke, whatever the address space that we assign to those network, that is what I added there, right, and nothing fancy. So we have this policy, and we adding this particular network there. Sometimes it takes a time to get the rule added. Not sometimes, I think all the time it takes a time to get the rule added, right? And that is where the IP group plays an important role, because if you updating the firewall rule, it's time consuming, but if you updating the IP group, it is not time consuming. So you reference the IP group for the CIDR in the firewall, and then only keep updating the IP group rather than the firewall. So that way what happens, it speed up the firewall update, and it's very useful when you got like a 10,000 rules, and you updating a firewall very frequently. That's where the IP group plays very important role. We haven't, I think, discussed as part of any slide in this particular section, but this is the beauty of the IP group. So every time you think to create a kind of rule within the firewall, make sure that you creating the IP group first, and then basically reference that IP group in your firewall rule. That is much more efficient, and then as and when you want to update the CIDR range, then you go ahead and update the only, not the firewall rule, right? So that way it affects immediately, rather than is taking firewall taking a time to update the rules as such, right? That is the most important thing that you need to understand in this particular case. All right, so let's basically have a test done as such. From the one, this was the resource. This was basically the spoke 1 VM, and we try to hop on to the spoke 3 VM through the RDP, right? And it should work as such, right? At this, I think when we did the test, it was from the spoke to VM. This is the one that we tried. So from the spoke to, so we will try from the spoke to itself, because the way that we open up the firewall rule is from the VNet to VNet, right? Let's see, and there you go. You got a response back straight away after adding that network rule. We can get on that 10.30 VM. All right. That is all about the network rule.